All right. So I was hoping to come to you guys with some news regarding, buyouts and potential trades for some of the contracts that we ended up taking on, being, Yusuf Nurkic, uh, Kevin Love, and Kyle Anderson. But unfortunately, in the passing days, it nothing has materialized. So I decided to go ahead and just pull the trigger and do a video because I think I'm long overdue. Today we are obviously, if you clicking on the thumbnail, focusing on the Utah Jazz. And we're going to talk about some of the lineups that I anticipate them particularly running, as well as some interesting things that I hope to see out of the rookie class specifically, and potentially, if I'm not destroying time too much, my thoughts on Keontae George, because I've been thinking about him a lot in my mind. Not in a weird way, just basketball stuff, you know? But to jump right into it, I think to start the season out, we're going to probably have Isaiah Collier running the one. We're going to have Ace at the three, I think. At the two, I've been mulling it over, and seeing how Keontae George ended last season is kind of concerning because obviously he spent a lot more time on the bench because the numbers weren't looking the way that they needed to, and he lost his starting role originally at the one spot to obviously Isaiah Collier, who showcased a lot of impressive antics. However, I think that Bryce Sensabaugh might be the starting two at the beginning of the season, at least. I could see a world where Keontae George takes it back. I could see a world where Sensabaugh plays himself out of that starting role. But I think at the beginning of the season, especially seeing the fact that he was literally essentially a 30-point per game scorer in the summer league, he has the ability to score the rock. We always knew he did, going back to his Ohio State days. Coming into the league, obviously he has some efficiency issues his rookie season in the beginning, but coming into his sophomore year, he put up some impressive numbers. So I have reason to believe that he will end up continuing this trend, and if the summer league was any obvious, indicator of that, I think it will be even better than even I originally anticipated after the end of last season, if I'm going to be quite frank. I think Larry Markkinen is probably going to be at the four, obviously, and then Walker Kessler is going to round things out at the five. However, this is the thing that plagues my mind just a little bit. Obviously, I think that Keontae George could potentially take his minutes back. I don't want to say minutes. I think he could take the starting role from Bryce Sensabaugh. Now, obviously, like I said, Bryce Sensabaugh has to either A, shoot pretty roughly, and be a defensive liability at the same time for a stretch of probably 7 to 12 games, most likely. And for Keontae George off the bench, he also has to be efficient. If he's not efficient on the bench, then you basically have two of the exact same player, two guys that are going to get beat on defense, potentially blown by majority of possessions. They're not going to switch very well. They're not going to communicate and be very vocal like they need to be. And then they're also going to be potentially black holes on offense that will shoot you out of a game. Now, granted, you do want to tank this year, but you want quality tanking games. You want to learn something in your losses. You don't want to lose just to lose. That defeats the whole purpose, because once you're actually trying to win, you have to learn everything from scratch, and nobody wants to do that. I think that this Jazz roster is compiled of a lot of guys that could be, second best players on a championship team, third best players, some solid rotational pieces, and it reminds me a lot of the Spurs and the Thunder. If you were to take out their star players, obviously Victor Wembanyama is generational, right? No discussion about that. Obviously, Shea has developed into a prolific scorer, and despite his struggles defensively in the finals, for the most part, he's been really, really good. So if you take those guys off, you still have a collective, a laundry list. And even if you look at the Pacers, a laundry list of players that aren't necessarily the top dog, but they're all really playable and can fit so many different situations that it really makes sense to just have them on your roster. And you don't have to overpay to bring them in and to keep them there, to be honest. I think that Ace Bailey will have the opportunity to be that number one guy. I want to buy Ace Bailey stock. When things were first going on with the media circus, I didn't like it. It was different from Kyle Filipowski, because Kyle Filipowski's had nothing to do with him. So people are talking about now, oh my gosh, he's so great. He can put together 30 points. He's due for a rise. He's the biggest riser in the summer league. He's so phenomenal. This guy was a second round pick. Oh my goodness, he's doing so good for a second round pick. And in my head, I'm like, if you take the media out of it and you just look at how he was in college, he was at worst, right? Somewhere in the 13 to 17 pick range, maybe 12 to 17. I'll give that window where he should have been drafted last year, in my opinion, of course. So when he slipped all the way to the second round, it wasn't, oh, he's a second round talent. It's the media circus that forced him into that position. He himself was always a borderline lottery pick or guaranteed lottery pick player, in my eyes specifically. Now, maybe I don't think that should have been a hot take as much as it seems to be now, because everybody's just ignoring the fact that he was supposed to be that good, as if they're treating it as if he just burst onto the scene and he's just some nobody. And that's not what we should be talking about. This was to be anticipated. I said multiple times, when he came off of the bench last year, he gave us quality minutes, because it's really hard, especially as a rookie, to come into the league, to come off the bench. You don't have time to warm up. You don't have time to heat up. You play your role, you do your job, you accept the shots that you receive, and you pray that you hit them. You have to be confident enough to hit them. And if you miss, you can't miss terribly. Because if you miss really bad and you're a defensive liability, or you struggle on either side of the ball, or you can't remember plays, you get yanked from the game. And then you either play in the G League or you sit on the bench. And Kyle Filipowski was one of those guys that it's very hard for some guys, if you're not like, a top 5 pick, top 7 pick, to come in and immediately impact the game, especially off of the bench. And he was able to be efficient off of the bench consistently. And not enough people talk about that. Not enough people cared. And I understand the Jazz, had the worst record in the league, but to me, they weren't the worst team in the league. We chose multiple nights to make sure we looked that way, but across the board, from a talent standpoint, that's not where we were. From a coaching standpoint, that's also not where we probably should have been. But, we accomplished the goal, kind of, because we were the worst team, but we ended up with the 5th pick. So you take what you can get. But I think that we're coming into a realm where Ace Bailey will have the opportunity to prove whether or not he is a number one, like his, agents and everybody claimed he is, and he should be receiving the keys of the offense, or is he just a really good number 2? And that's perfectly fine as well, right? Let's say Lowry just stays on this team, and 2-3 years from now, we're making a playoff push. We're starting that ascension phase of things, right? You have mid-20s Walker Kessler, you have mid-20s Keontae if he continues to ascend, mid-20s Sensabaugh, actually, Walter Clayton Jr. will actually be in his mid-20s as well. Now I think about it, because he did spend all 5 years in college. But, you get the point. You'll have a lot of guys that are in their mid-20s making a push. You just saw the Thunder have a lot of quality guys, and while they didn't have, the championship pedigree, or a lot of guys that had extreme playoff value and just having played in the playoffs for a significant period of time in the past, they still managed to get the job done when it mattered most, because they were deliberate in their actions, they followed their game plans, and they were versatile enough to make things happen against other teams when they needed it most. I think that Ace will have the opportunity this season to show us which side he's on, because I feel like if you come in your rookie year, you can potentially, change people's minds after your rookie season and show them that you are a number 1. But usually, if you play like a number 2 your entire year, you're a number 2. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, I think that we're in the stage where we have a collective amalgamation of players where they're all very quality for the most part. And they're all desiring, at the peak of their careers, they're all capable of playing playoff minutes. However, it only matters if you have the one, right? And we saw the Pacers go on their run with Tyrese Halliburton, and I don't think he's a superstar. I don't think Pascal Siakam's a superstar. I don't think they're probably top 12, maybe not even, maybe they crack 15, like right there at 15, maybe 14. I don't have a list cemented in my head right now to say for certain. The question will be, is Ace Bailey capable of shouldering that burden, or is he just going to be a Pascal Siakam, where he can be a very reliable guy that can carry the load sometimes, but he's not always going to be great enough to lead you when you really need it most. So you'll need that Tyrese Halliburton type of player, or a player, honestly, just a little bit better than Tyrese Halliburton and a little bit more of a gambler than Tyrese Halliburton to carry you over the hump when the time comes. That said, Obviously, I said Collier, Sensabaugh, Bailey, Markkanen, Kessler as our starting five. Off the bench, I think it's going to be Clayton, Keontae, Taylor Hendricks, Kyle Filipowski, and most likely Oscar Tshiebwe. The minutes will get a little bit finicky with the bigs because obviously I don't think that Nurkic, Kevin Love, and Kyle Anderson are going to be on this roster in the regular season. And if they are, I don't see them actually garnering minutes at all, to be quite frank, which means that you're going to have Walker Kessler starting and you're probably going to be forced to play Kyle Filipowski at the 5 spot, which you don't really want to do for defensive issues that were exposed in the summer league to a pretty rough degree. Now, in pick and rolls, I love the way he plays. He's not slow of feet. He doesn't really have slow footedness. And that's a problem that you have usually with your guys as they approach 7 foot. He's also filled out his frame a little bit better. Last season, he was big, but he's now NBA big. He's a little bit more muscularly toned, so the weight is a little bit more functional than it was, just size on his body before. The issue that we had with Cody Williams, for example, was the fact that, he was a string bean. And so there was a lot of times he was on the court and you would watch the game and you said, dang, we're a pretty not terrible team right now, but he's getting cooked and he's not hitting his shots. So why is he out there? But then you have to remember, oh, wait, we're tanking. And the reason why I don't have him in this top 10 list right here for both lineups is because I don't quite know just yet where he sits, where he stands, and what we can expect from him. Now, as the Summer League tailed out, Cody Williams looked actually a lot better than I thought he would. He looks a lot more comfortable. I can tell he put on a little bit more size. He's not quite where he needs to be, but even if he put on 10 pounds, I think he was 178 when draft day or when the combine was had. So even if he's like 190, 191, that's light years better. It's not where he needs to be, but it's definitely going to afford him a little bit more time to make mistakes and have opportunity to just do stuff. He obviously felt a little bit more comfortable and confident to take certain shots. I think I want to say definitely over half of the Summer League games that he played in, he shot more than 12 field goal attempts. Now, the field goal percentage wasn't always pretty, but he was willing to take those shots, and that says a lot about how far he's come. The development timeline for him is a little bit more finicky, and I don't feel comfortable putting a finite or specific pin in the board and saying, oh yeah, we should see this version of him by this time of the year when XYZ happens. I can't do that with him in good conscience, I'll say. Of course, I could just say anything, and, some people do, but I'm not one of those guys. I keep it as real as possible, as much as I can. Now, another thing that I didn't really touch too much on, but I do want to keep an eye on, and I think you guys should too, Isaiah Collier at the starting point guard spot. Obviously, last year, because of the stretch they had, I think it was February or March time. It was probably March time when he had the full month where he just looked really, really good passing the ball. Still turnover prone, right? And still incredibly inefficient shooting the ball. Shot too many threes, did not hit nearly enough to justify shooting more than 2 a game. But there was a lot of games where he was shooting 4 or 5. I think that this year, the pressure is going to be on him just a little bit. He didn't look really spry in the Summer League. It didn't look like he was fully awake. Now, it could just be because he knows he's solidified as a starting point guard to start the season out. It could be because he knows he has nothing to prove in the Summer League. I'm willing to entertain both of those opportunities, both of those conversations. However, if we get 10 games into the season and he plays the same way he played in the Summer League, starting the season out, we're going to have a conversation. And the person that's going to force the conversation isn't going to be Keyonte George. It's going to be Walter Clayton Jr. And I say that because Walter Clayton Jr., obviously 5 years in college. He has the really good footwork that you would love to see from somebody that spent a lot of time in college. He is fully developed. His IQ is off the charts. He could stand to be a little bit better of a decision maker at times, and he is not the craziest passer. He's not the most efficient passer. But what is most important for him is he always, like 87% of the time, makes the right play. He makes the correct play. Not the play he wants, but the play that should be made. And for a young guy coming into the NBA, that's one of those things where the selfishness and the I was him in college. Now I kind of have to tone it down a little bit. I still have the ball in my hands a lot, but I can't really do what I used to do. I can't get away with what I used to get away with. And I can't gamble and just look at coach and be like, coach, but I do this. Because it's not my time right now. And Walter Clayton Jr., even in the summer league, while he didn't do anything, tremendously eye-popping, he was efficient enough and he looked comfortable enough, both out of DHOs and just a lot of screen work looked really, really nice to me. I'm not going to lie. He doesn't really have a fast first step, which I don't want to say is concerning. He has a very nice, quick trigger, which was really nice to see. And his footwork, like I said, especially coming over screens, looks really nice. The issue with him not having a fast first step means that it kind of limits his game offensively when it comes to attacking closeouts. When it comes to coming over a screen, he can't necessarily create a mismatch or create an extreme advantage. He's relying on that screen to really give him the opportunity to see a sliver of daylight, and then he lets that thing fly. Now, the efficiency that he hits it with in college warrants it to be considered a good shot at the NBA level currently. But if we get 20 games in a season and he's saying these same types of shots, having the same shot diet essentially, and it's against longer, more athletic, and more capable players, he's not going to be able to get away with it as much, and his percentages will show that as a result, and it's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. However, like I said, with him making the proper decisions and making the correct play, whether or not he feels like it's something that he wants to do, leads to a lot of times, especially in the summer league, I saw he would pass the ball to the person it needed to go to. The ball oftentimes didn't necessarily have enough mustard on it, or sometimes it was just a little bit off base, but it went in the area where it needed to go. And so as a passer, Isaiah Collier is definitely a better one right now. Still turnover prone, but definitely a better one right now. However, I think Walter Clayton's understanding of the game overall, having been in college as long as he is or was, will ultimately make the difference between his exponential growth as a passer coming into the league. Him having more spacing now is also going to do wonders for his game, particularly in the mid-range, because in college things were obviously a lot more clogged up and the shooters around him just, weren't going to be as good as they are going to be at the NBA level, or weren't going to be expected to be as good. So it was a lot easier to bog things down, and he wasn't able to be as patient and let things develop. As he comes into his own NBA pacing, though, I think that we're going to see a side of him that most people don't really expect to see, because everybody knows that, he's supposed to be a really good shooter. That's the guaranteed lock for him. But I think if he can be a guy that can comfortably get you 6 assists a game, and maybe he has 2 turnovers, and he can also shoot borderline, let's say he shoots 37% from 3 his rookie year. It's night and day already with Isaiah Collier. Let's say he shoots roughly league average at the rim in mid-range. That's also a lot better than Isaiah Collier. And that's where the questions come in. Because obviously, Isaiah Collier did so much for you last year and he looked really, really nice. But the objective of this tank is to learn who is going to be your front runners and your leaders going forward. Like I said, Walter Clayton Jr. spent all 5 years in college. So I don't know how much older he is than Isaiah Collier, but he's a comfortable 2, maybe 3 years. With that being said, it wouldn't be the most surprising thing if he overtook Isaiah Collier over the course of an entire season, because he has the ability, he has all the intangibles, he has the IQ, he has the understanding of the game, and he has the development already behind him and the countless hours necessary to make the adjustments to allow him to take that spot. But at the end of the day, it's still Isaiah Collier's to lose. So, like I said, if he comes into this season and it's 10, 15 games in and he's shooting 27% from 3 on 3 attempts a night and, low 40s, 42% from the field overall. And he has, 7, 8 assists, but he also has 4, sometimes 5 turnovers, sometimes 3 turnovers. You're going to start looking at some things. Yes, you want to tank, but again, you want to learn something while you're tanking. And if the thing you're learning is, well, he might not be the starting point guard, but he might be the great point guard for the second unit, that would be good to know early on. And then also understanding if Walter Clayton Jr. can carry the load as a starting point guard in the league, how early on he'll be prepared, or if he has a very specific ceiling and what that ceiling exactly looks like for him. Like I said before, Keyonte George, I think that he will have a good season this year. I think this is going to be the year where he finally takes that step forward. And I think it's not because he wants to, it's not because he feels like it should be something that should occur. I think it's because he recognizes it's now or never. The fire has been lit up under his butt, right? You have Collier. You have Sensabaugh, who's shooting lights out. You have Ace Bailey, who you could slide up to a guard spot. We'll talk about that in a moment. You have Walter Clayton Jr. You have Cody Williams, who's not in the equation right now. And yes, he's more of a small forward wing kind of guy, but I mean, at the same time, he's not in that role yet. And if he doesn't put on enough weight, he will end up being more in that 2-guard spot, though he will still naturally be a tweener. So there's a lot of guys that need minutes. And if you're Keyonte George, you went from being that guy, from being touted as potentially the savior in a way, to being a guy that's potentially getting phased out of the rotation. Walker Kessler, people were like, oh man, we might have to trade him. He might just, if he doesn't take a step forward, we thought he was going to take a step forward his sophomore year, and he didn't do it. His rookie season, he looked great. Sophomore year, he looked kind of mid. Third year in the league, he said, hold on, Walker. That's how we're walking now? The sheriff's in town. You know what I'm saying? But this is the opportunity for Keyonte George to take that. And honestly, it's more detrimental to him because there's actually people around him that will literally take his minutes in real time. For Walker Kessler, there wasn't really that many guys that could do what he could do defensively and rebound as necessary and just steal his minutes from him. Like, there was no way where there was 2-3 guys on the depth chart that would leapfrog him if he was just mediocre his third year. But for Keyonte George, in his second year, he already got potentially leapfrogged. So coming into his third year, if he doesn't make something happen, he will definitely get leapfrogged. I think he definitely has the ability to be a really good shooter in this league. I think his shot diet could change a little bit. I think his efficiency should definitely be a lot higher than it is. I think he needs to cut down on the number of threes that he takes because it does hurt his overall efficiency. And I think defensively, he could stand to communicate a little bit better on that side of the ball, slide his feet a little bit better, and just stay mentally prepared and locked in a little bit better. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, the Jazz as a team were terrible defensively. But if you look at if you just take if you take any tape from any game, for the most part, any game that we lost, I'll say specifically, and you look at each player individually, depending on the lineup that we have on the floor, there's specific areas that will be exploited. Now, when you're a coach for a tanking organization, for a tanking team during any particular year, you want to create the openings for another team to attack, and you also want to create kind of safeguards in a way to see how much of a liability is this person in the situation. Yes, the guard tandem we have on the floor is 6'2" and 6'3". Combined wingspans, their average is about 6'6", 6'7", But how bad is it going to be when they're brought up to the line or they get put in a pick and roll and the guard that's trying to work them is 6'5", 6'6"? Is it going to be a drastic difference? Are they going to be able to communicate over ball screens properly? Can they navigate ball screens properly? I forgot to say, Walter Clayton Jr. does navigate ball screens surprisingly well, and defensively, he looked not as bad as I thought he would. I know coming out of college, him being 6'2", despite having, a pretty solid frame, he's not necessarily thought to be a positive on that side of the ball. Now, the question was always going to be how much of a negative he would end up becoming, or how much would a negative would he end up showing himself to be. And for the most part, he was surprisingly competent. He wasn't great. I don't think overall he was probably a positive on that side of the floor. He might have been a slight negative. But the thing that surprised me the most was the fact that it didn't look like he was very easily picked on. Now, sometimes it did look like he just wasn't locked in, like towards the midway point of some games. But from the tip to the end of the game, overall, he put on a solid show. And when you have guys like Isaiah Collier on the floor and Bryce Sensabaugh at the same time, the conversation is going to be, okay, can both of these guys be competent enough defensively? And if not, who is the bigger issue and why are they the bigger issue? What are the two issues that they have? Do they overlap? Can we kind of cover for them? Because, back in the olden days when we had Rudy Gobert and we had Donovan Mitchell, we didn't really have a lot of great perimeter defenders. And so the mantra was, hey, we can't guard really well on the perimeter, so let's just run guys off the line. Rudy Gobert will clean up the rim. And for the most part, it did work until it didn't. And As a coaching staff, we hope that Will Hardy and the guys will be able to understand what everybody's limitations are defensively and come up with a plan that will work when we actually want to win games. Right now, the goal is to lose. So you want to put guys in compromising positions, but you don't want to just sit there and throw guys out there to get slaughtered. You want them to try and put the puzzle pieces together to try and find a solution on their own while also communicating amongst each other so you can figure out how, like, to varying degrees, how much problems will essentially be. That's the short story of everything I just said, basically. Taylor Hendricks coming back is going to be really interesting. Him fitting in with that front court should be nice. I could see him running a lot more at the 5, allowing Flip to stay at the 4. But at the same time, you could see a lineup that goes big, and you have Lowry at the 3. You have Ace Bailey at the 2. You have Collier. You have Keontae. You have Walter Clayton Jr. at the 1. Maybe for some reason they might roll out Bryce Sensabaugh. I don't know why they would do that. But, when you're tanking, you can see just literally anything that could potentially happen will happen. And obviously Walker Kessler at the 5. I could see Walker Kessler sliding off the floor sometimes. Flip comes in the game. When Taylor Hendricks is there, obviously the lineup will be just a little bit different, I would assume. And Kyle Filipowski will have the opportunity to continue building on the expectations that everybody has for him. As a playmaker, I like to see him be involved in a lot of dribble handoffs. I like to see him set those high screens, get available. I like to see him continue to hit jumpers at a high rate, especially in the regular season. I like to see his IQ continue to show through, his ability to be free-flowing, to play within the scheme of the offense, but also recognize when something isn't working, let me do my thing because I know I can exploit this matchup that I have right now. And for Oscar Tshiebwe, just kind of being a stopgap, fitting in where the opportunity presents itself and not overplaying his role too much because, again, if memory serves me right, he's 6'8", might be 6'7" barefoot. So there's going to be some limitations there just because of size, but overall he's extremely sturdy. So as a rebounder, I have faith in his ability to properly hold his ground, box out, and get the job done when it matters most, particularly this season at the very least. Like I said, Nurkic, Kevin Love, Kyle Anderson, don't expect them to be here. If they are here, cool, I guess. I don't want them taking minutes from anybody, though. As veteran leaders in the locker room, Udonis Haslem type beat, James Johnson type beat, cool. We get really depleted for injuries, hopefully not, but if it should happen, then they see the floor. Okay, acceptable behavior. But outside of that, I think that will be in for a very interesting season. I know I didn't cover it too much when I was talking about Ace Bailey, but another thing just to throw out there real quick. I think that we could see him run a lot more guard. I don't want to say a lot more shooting guard than small forward, but it might be closer to a 50-50 split sometimes, especially if Bryce Sensabaugh is on the court alongside him, or if we decide to go big when we have Taylor Hendricks back, because his handle is weak. And that's something that we talked about in pre-draft, and even when he got drafted, that was something that we knew he was going to have to work on. And secondarily, as a playmaker, he's piss poor. He has to get better at both of those things. And I think he's one of those players where he has to experience that failure to really recognize where he needs to get better and exactly how he needs to get better and fully commit to that part. So if he thinks that his handle is good enough, he's going to keep doing the same things and avoiding putting himself in compromising positions. But as a coaching staff, especially on a tanking team, again, you want to put guys in compromising positions, especially ones where they need to learn something. And I think sliding him up to the 2 would make it so that he's forced to be more of a playmaker. Obviously, we know he's going to have the ball in his hands a pretty sizable portion of the time. But in that world, it's not just going to be, okay, it's the Ace Bailey show. Let me shoot the rock as much as possible. It's going to be, again, like what Walter Clayton Jr. does well, make proper decisions, make the correct play, not make the play that I'm used to doing because when I was at Rutgers, I had the ultimate green light alongside Dylan Harper. I have to make the right play because it's an expectation because I'm a leader on this team. I'm, though a rookie, am supposed to be, in my heart, one of the hearts of the team. I'm supposed to be the pulse. I want to be the number one option. So I have to show you that I am competent enough both as a self-scorer and as a playmaker and creator for others to warrant the ball being placed in my hands, whether the game just started whether we're at the beginning of the third quarter or if we're in clutch time, because when the ball touches my hands, I will make the right play and I will give us the best opportunity to win games. But those are just a couple things I wanted to touch on. I'll probably talk more about Ace Bailey, Walter Clayton Jr., and Tonje in the next video, just depending on what more I see and what I cover when I look over the Summer League tape just a little bit more and diving a little bit more into the numbers, as well as looking at the timetable for guys like Taylor Hendricks, particularly with his injuries naturally, and considering whether or not Lowry will end up being more ball dominant similar to last year. So his percentages will be down, obviously, because he has the ball in his hands a lot more, or if he'll kind of start reverting back to his pre 2024, 2025 season role where he does a lot more spot up things and he's relying on other guys to get him involved, i.e. Ace Bailey and, Isaiah Collier, Walter Clayton Jr. and whatnot. But if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you. Smash that like button, subscribe, become a member of the channel, host for the content. Drop thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what you think your starting five. What do you think the starting five lineup should be at the beginning of the season? And what potentially could you see it happening, mid or at the end of the season? And who do you think the biggest riser on the roster is going to be, as well as the polar opposite? Who's going to struggle the most this upcoming season? With that being said, though, it's been your boy Wraith Hoops. And as always, good morning, good evening, and good night, no matter where you're in the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.